Man doesn't need you to be a Sports Illustrated cover model. Most men know themselves. They know that they're not going to get a Sports Illustrated cover model, and they don't care. They don't need that. They can see that and go, yeah, she's gorgeous. And they've made that commitment, that investment of caring in you, not in her. The truth is, he can see all that he wants. He can see all the sexiness. He can see all the attractiveness, all the flaws that you see in yourself. He looks right past them, or he might see them and see them as things that he finds endearing about you because they're unique to you.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is a really extra special one because I've got my husband, Dante, back on the podcast, joining me for, I think it's the third time. But today we're doing something a little bit different. On today's episode, I'm going to be asking Dante some questions. And these are real questions that come straight from the hearts of the women that I work with every single day. Midlife is such a season of awakening for so many women. It's a season for many of us of unbecoming, of shedding roles and identities and patterns and asking the question, who am I really? And as a woman, as we begin to do this work, there's often this very deep desire for our partners to meet us here, to join us on this journey, to rise up as we're rising, to grow in the ways that we're growing. I've been there. And it can feel really frustrating. It can feel a little unnerving and even scary when our husbands, when our partners are not joining us, or maybe we go first and there's this period of time where we're wondering, can this marriage even survive? Is this relationship going to survive my awakening, my rise, my finding myself? Is he even going to love me on the other side of this? Am I going to love him on the other side of this? So today we're going to open it up with Dante in a really honest conversation, man to woman, husband to wife, and we're going to listen to him from his perspective, again, with questions that women have shared with me. I've had some of my clients even submit some questions today for Dante, so there's not going to be any scripts. We're just going to get into it. So buckle up. Welcome back to the podcast, Dante.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's quite the pleasure. For those of you who have not listened to our other two podcasts that we've recorded together, I'm going to link them in the show notes here so that you can hear a little bit of our journey in our marriage. We'll be married 28 years this month, which is wild. And over the last 6 years, we've done a lot of work on ourselves and in our marriage. So we essentially took the house down in the marriage. We're not going to get into any of that here today, but if you want a bit of our backstory, you can again go listen to our previous two podcasts. And I do think that our story and all the work that we've each done on ourselves, Dante, gives us some credibility and some credibility to you as a man who's been walking side by side with me through my own journey, my own awakening, and my own rise, and as well as yours too, really, truly. So that's why we thought it would be really fun to do a Q&A here today. I have so many clients that I work with that come to me in midlife, especially really wanting to work on themselves, and they start working on themselves. And one of the things that becomes a very common theme for a lot of these women that I work with is, my husband needs to change, like stat. He has to change right now. I don't feel safe with him if he doesn't do his own inner work. And so that can get really sticky. So I've had a lot of them submit questions, and we're going to get through as many as we can here today in maybe like 45 minutes. And we might need to just do another podcast episode. So I'm going to get into it. So Dante, from your perspective as a man, what's it like when your partner begins to change and grow and, let's say like wake up in midlife?
I suppose it depends on what form that takes. And I think for some men, I think it's probably very exciting and maybe in some cases validating. I think as women tend to get, into that age, they start to get just a little bit more into their healthy masculine. And so there's just a little bit more, kind of talking things through in a way where emotions don't necessarily take precedent over everything, which is happens a little bit more when you're younger, certainly. So I think that for some husbands, that can be a good thing. At the same time, I think that there are certainly men who are living in their own delusion as well. And so when their woman starts to change, that can be very frightening because she starts to point out things that we've already agreed we weren't going to talk about. Whether it's the third glass of wine, whether it's, whatever the thing is, it can be scary. It's like, wait, hang on a second. We have an equilibrium that we've agreed, dysfunctional though it may be. And all of us are living with some level of dysfunction. For those who are living with a high level of dysfunction, when someone starts to rise and wake up, it's scary. You'd rather they stay in the delusion,
Yeah.
So I think that for husbands, it's going to depend on the man and whether he wants to be healthy and really wants to be the best version of himself and wants his wife to be the same, or if he is small and wants to remain small, in which case he'd probably like to keep her even smaller. So it depends on the man. And I think I gave two different far ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with me, when I started doing my own deeper inner work and I stepped onto this path, and I mentioned this in the first podcast episode that you and I did together, but I knew that if I started working on myself, there was this possibility that our marriage wouldn't survive it because there were a lot of things that I was really unhappy with. And I really came to find out over time as we opened things up that you were unhappy with too. There, you mentioned these unspoken agreements or unspoken rules between us, and I was breaking some of them. So did it ever feel confronting or threatening or even confusing to you when I started to do my own deeper work?
Yeah, absolutely. All the above. All the above. And I gave the example of two far ends of the spectrum, but the truth is most of us are probably somewhere in the middle where there's an overlap actually. And so to the point, you're making, for me, it was the equilibrium is being disrupted. That's uncomfortable. We're talking about things we've agreed to not talk about. That's uncomfortable. And I don't know if this is I suppose this is me. Something inside me thought, maybe ultimately that's for the good. Maybe in the long run, there's something good there. There are things that you're not happy about. Maybe those things could change too. If we're starting to see reality, maybe all things could be seen. And for me, that was like, oh, okay. And I leaned into that.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, what would you say really helped you to stay open instead of shutting down as I was, again, opening things up in myself, therefore opening things up in our marriage?
For me, it came down to a core fundamental belief, very powerful internal drive. My parents were divorced from the time I was very little. I know that affected me deeply. And I didn't quite understand how deeply or exactly how at that time, but I knew what I felt. And what I felt was, I will not do that. I will not do that to my kids. That's not happening. So if I had to find my strength from anything, it was the determination that I was not going to let that happen. That was more powerful for me than whatever was saying, let's run away from this situation. I was not going to do that.
Yeah. So, what would you say actually allows a man to receive an invitation from his partner to grow instead of feeling criticized or controlled or not enough?
Well, from our case, what I noticed was you shifting. So it was kind of like a by example. When I mentioned the parts of me that were thinking, oh my gosh, we're talking about things we shouldn't be talking about. At the same time, you were shifting yourself and being humble about things that I was like, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, you're talking about all these issues on my end, but you're actually acknowledging these things over on your end. So humility. I think it was your ability to start to show humility and vulnerability around things that for you had until then been verboten. And it was seeing that in you that I thought, wait a minute. I actually see real positive shift here. Because believe it or not, in my mind, I'm like, I can change. It's within my power to change. I have felt up until this time in our relationship that you were the immovable object. So when I saw you move, I thought, oh my God, it's possible? Okay, then wait, maybe we can do this. So I guess I would say humility. And I mean that for if you're talking about your clients, listeners, whatever you want to say. Can they find their humility? And if they can be vulnerable and show some of that to their husbands, the man in their lives, if he's smart and he's observant, he will notice it. He may not even be able to articulate it, but he will feel it. And that may open him up to other conversations.
So one of the things that I recommend to the women when I start working with them at the beginning of their own journey is stay in your lane and work on yourself. So working on yourself instead of worrying so much about changing him. Oftentimes I will have women come to me and one of their biggest pain points is their husband, their marriage, and they don't feel safe in the marriage, and their husband needs to change so that they can feel safe and secure. And so what I recommend is let's put that aside right now so that you start working on you and you become more and more aware of your own needs. You become more aware of your own limiting beliefs, your constructs, all the stuff that's creating angst for you. And the more that you heal, so to speak, the softer you're going to become and the more humble you're going to become. There's no way that you're going to step onto the trajectory of growing if you're not being humble. So you have to step into humility yourself and you have to be humble about yourself and be honest about yourself. So what I hear you saying is when you start bringing that humility into the relationship and into conversations with your partner and maybe admitting and sharing that you haven't been perfect in all ways, right? And the hope is that he's starting to see you change and see that humility in you. And maybe you're changing some of your behaviors. Like one of my behaviors, one of my MOs was to be really controlling. And my control was coming from a place of fear. And that wasn't serving you, that I was so controlling. And when I could see myself and see with humility and honesty how my control was coming from fear, and I started to work on not being so controlling and being softer and more faithful, that rippled out to our marriage and it rippled out to my behavior towards you. And then that helped you to be able to approach me with more honesty. So if there were things that did bother you about maybe my actions or the way that I would talk to you, or things that you wanted more of or maybe less of in the relationship, once you saw that I was humble with myself, did that help you to trust that I was going to be more humble with the things you were bringing to me? Yeah.
That's exactly right. You've used all the right words because what you've said is when you're controlling, that's masculine, right? Control is a masculine thing. Softness, vulnerability, those are the feminine. Those are the healthy feminine. So if you take a step back, the feminine is way more powerful than the masculine. Okay. They balance one another, but the feminine is incredibly powerful, right? It nurtures life. And it's why it's intoxicating. And we men are naturally drawn to it. It's just like cats to catnip. We don't even understand why. But that feminine power is really strong. And so when you have that dynamic, you have that connection together, the feminine has the power to step in, to be vulnerable and step back and create a space so that a man who might be not in the healthy masculine has a little room to step into it and to begin to experience what that is. What we have so often is some of us are in an unhealthy masculine space. So what you're describing was you being in an unhealthy masculine space within our relationship. Ultimately, it's my responsibility because I was leaving the void there, right? So humility, personal accountability, fine. And now you start to take this space and appear more vulnerable. And I start to feel more confident and comfortable to say, no, actually, I'd rather go for, a New Orleans style food tonight as opposed to going out to Italian. And you go, okay, which is vulnerable and feminine as opposed to saying, no, I really want to stay and go to the place that I said to go to, right? Because that's, so you just get a little bit of taste of that. And then a man will go, okay, it's maybe it is safe to step into this space a bit, and then he'll do it more. And so the woman has the power, the ability to pull him into that space if she uses that feminine power in a healthy way. So I would agree that your ability to bring humility and vulnerability to the table was important. Now, it's on the man to recognize it and value it, right? Because the unhealthy masculine just takes and doesn't have any recognition of what's being offered in front of him. He doesn't see the value in what's being put in front of him. And so it's important for people to bear that in mind too. It's like, it's not as if nothing's on the man here. It's on the man to read the signals and to step into the space. And
Right.
it takes strength to do that.
So what if we have a man that's not, I mean, he's not in his healthy masculine, right? And so he's not seeing any of this. He's not stepping forward. What would be the difference between an invitation that inspires him versus one that makes him want to resist or withdraw? Like, how does a woman invite her partner into this space of growth? I mean, he's got to grow within himself in order to grow the marriage. So, marriage takes, obviously, partnership takes two people, and these two people come together in this sacred container of a marriage. But the marriage itself, the relationship, is the third thing. It's the third thing that you're creating together. So as she's becoming more humble and aware, and she's softening, and she's leaning into her healthy femininity more, and now there's this gap because he's not picking up the signals. He's not doing his own work. He's not changing. This is where I find a lot of women want to come and approach their man and invite him. And they don't know how to do it in a way that's not controlling and not mothering and not telling him what to do. And at the same time, they do have a need for him to, maybe it's communicate more. Maybe it is be more self-reflective. Maybe it is to join them on this very intimate bonding path of spiritual growth. So what's that energy? What is the approach that's going to be most supportive and not cause him to shut down?
I think the hardest part of this, as you described it, which I think is a great little analogy, right? Like she's sort of rising and he's in this. Okay, so what happens in this time? It gets uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable. Okay. How long can you sustain that discomfort? Because you're both uncomfortable, and everybody is inclined to close that gap. It's just, you'll feel that and you immediately want to close it. Now, I would argue that like, this is why we have to discern what relationships are worthwhile and what relationships aren't. As this happens, two things are going to happen. One, she has to decide, is he doing things that appear to, even if he's not rising, does he look like he's trying? Is he looking around for a foothold? Is he is he taking some action? Is he asking questions? Is he being humble? Is he looking into himself? Is he taking action that look more like just empty words trying to placate me? And if that's the case, then okay, you can have some grace and you have to be patient. And a lot of times it's just being patient and just allowing the discomfort to occur. We're making this shape. And what are we talking about? We're talking about not getting together for dates. We're talking about lack of intimacy, like we live in this space. And as long as it's not being used as a bludgeon, that discomfort is something we have to get used to. Now, a man who is a worthwhile is going to see that gap and he's going to want to rise. There's something about us that wants to lead. We look at hierarchy and we're always making calculations. So one of the things I would caution women to do is when you're in this position, let's assume, first of all, this is your perspective. So you're looking at this like this. And let me tell you, from a man's perspective, that doesn't feel good. Okay. Bill Burr has a great joke where he describes he and his wife, and she's this pristine, perfectly mirrored skyscraper, and he is the dilapidated building next door that's always got scaffolding around it and always being worked on. And I think it's very easy to get into the space, especially in the feminine space where feeling and connecting is so important. We talk about feelings and we talk about that space a lot, but we don't talk as much about the masculine and the masculine space. So it's very easy for women to imagine that they're in the higher position when they may actually not be noticing things that the man is bringing to the table. What he fails to do is rise and say, hang on a second, let's take a look at the things that I'm bringing to the table here as it relates to provision, real safety, things like that. And he has to then be humble and look at himself and saying, am I providing an environment that makes her feel safe? This concept of safety is so important to women. It's the number one thing. And men, we live in a different world. Like, we live under threat of death on a daily basis. We think about the fact that we could die any day. It's just a fact of life for men. And I'm not saying we're all on the front lines. I just mean it to say we look at world differently, and we look at this lived experience differently. And men are not good at justifying themselves, justifying their existence, because the things that they provide, even we believe it's like the electricity is working, the house is heated. Like, there's a lot of things that men may be providing that they're not necessarily getting accolades for.
That's
And
really
so
true. Hmm.
this dynamic can
Yeah.
feel this way when it may not be quite that way. Having said that, to go back to your initial question and wrap this question up, patience is very difficult, but being comfortable in the discomfort, being patient, continuing to be gracious, continuing to be vulnerable, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. And look at the signs. If your man is oblivious, then he's telling you something, and you should listen to what he's telling you. If he's not oblivious, but he's struggling, well, then give him some grace. What I can't tell you is that there's dozens of resources for men that are out there. There are not many resources. And so, we've been talking about this, and we may talk about this at a later date, but right now there's just not many places to send people, men in particular. I
Yeah.
think I answered your question and then went beyond that.
No, that was really helpful. So, what do you wish women better understood about men, especially emotionally? Like, what's important for us to really understand about you guys? Because we often think that you are like us and that you think like us, right? That you process like us, and you just don't. You remind me often, Jen, I'm not a woman. All of that in your head right now that you're projecting on me, it's not even there because I'm a man.
Yes. Well, we've watched Alison Armstrong, who we should
Yeah.
give credit to.
Yeah, she's
she
phenomenal.
always says she's great. And she says, women look at a man and they see a hairy, unkempt woman who knows the right thing to do and is just choosing not to do it. It's like, that is hilarious because it's just so funny to us. It's the furthest thing from our minds. And to be fair, men often look at women as irrational, unaccountable men. We're just like, what are you doing?
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, having said that, what should women know about men? Well, the first thing I would say is this: we have feelings. We have feelings, and men, we live to be the rock that our women crash on. We live for it. It makes us feel good. And many men have no one to go to with their real feelings because it may not be fair. We talk about double standards not being fair, and they go in both directions. The double standard for men is you always have to be there for everyone else's feelings. And your woman says she wants to hear how you feel, but if you were to go with her something that's actually scaring you, it would not go well. It wouldn't go well because she needs you to be the vessel for all that stuff. And this is what we take on as men. It's bizarre how we're ready, willing, and anxious to take on that responsibility, but most of us are. And yet we do have feelings. And it can be very difficult. I know that it's an old adage. Most men are afraid to share their feelings with their woman because they think that later on it will be used against them in an argument. It will be weaponized against them, and very often it is. And I've also learned since then, also from Alison Armstrong, that a common thing that women will do is a man will share something with them in confidence, and that makes them important. And then they want to go and they tell their friends because they want their friends to see how important they are, not understanding that for a man, that's the ultimate betrayal. And so men are reticent to share our feelings because, one, we have to decide which feelings are acceptable to share. And so 1B, there's a set of feelings that we can't share that maybe if you're lucky, if you're one of the very lucky men out there, you have a father or a grandfather who you can talk to and really say, this is going on and I'm scared, because there's nobody else in this planet who's going to care or understand. There's virtually nobody for most of us. So that's just a thing that we carry as men. So women would be wise to know that. And I think that wise women are not only aware of that, but they're really grateful.
Mm-hmm.
They're really grateful for how much it means when a man cares.
Mm.
And that's the other thing I would say is understand just how much it means to a man when he decides to care about someone. We are constantly calculating.
Mm-hmm.
the value. What's the word? It's like, how much effort is this going to take versus what's the payoff going to be? And when we made this analogy before, I'm thinking to myself, be careful, because if you get too far, he's going to go, what's the point? I can never reach her standards. And he's going to give up. But we're always making that calculation. And so for a man to decide that he cares about a woman, he's basically cutting his life in half. And I don't mean financially. I mean, he's cutting his life in half. He's basically saying, hey, look, if something crazy happens to me, I could die. And if something crazy is about to happen to her, I have to jump in the way and die instead. That's a major commitment.
Yeah.
Just like women make a major commitment when they decide to get pregnant. Once a woman is getting pregnant, like, that's a major commitment. So each of us is giving these major commitments, but a man's commitment is rarely spoken of because it doesn't sell magazines, as they say.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we do have
And
feelings. I
yeah.
would certainly say that.
And us women can be very quick to criticize, to not take that into consideration, to not take into consideration that you do have feelings and that you might be holding them in internally to protect us too. We're like, why don't you share more? That's something that I hear a lot from my female clients and audiences. I want my husband to connect more, to share more, to be more vulnerable, right? We have this desire for you to be more vulnerable. And everything that you're saying really helps us to understand why that vulnerability is not actually always safe for both of us. It's not just about you, it's also about us. And then what are we going to do with that? Because you are designed to be our protector and our provider.
I have a question for you. What
Yeah.
do you think it is that drives, if we're agreeing that in general, like, that's a drive that women have when they're saying, I want him to be more vulnerable? What do you think drives that? If it's almost like they say they want a thing, but ultimately if they get it, they realize they didn't want it. If that's kind of what you're saying,
Well, I
what
think
drives that?
so. What drives it? Well, what has driven it for me is I want to know that you are aware that you have shortcomings and that there's things that, seriously, there's things that you could work on. And I just want to know that you think about it. So, can you please be vulnerable and tell me what your shortcomings are? And then tell me your plan to work on them. That would be really helpful
You
for
didn't know that
me.
you have shortcomings. Like,
No, I'm dead serious. This is
I know
what
you
I
are.
have felt, and this is what I hear from women all the time.
I know. This
They
is
don't seem to see that they're not perfect. And they're really not perfect, and I'm going to list the reasons why they're not perfect. And they're not opening up to me and reflecting back at how they're not perfect. And so I'm over here worrying for them and mothering them and trying to get them to be more perfect because they're not doing it by themselves. They're not reflecting, they're not self-reflecting. And us women tend to talk about everything. We're just like blah, 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 right, like, and we're thinking out loud all the time. And here we're begging you guys to open up. And what I really came to see with us in our work that we've done and where we've gotten to today, and I've helped you see it too, Dante, is I just need to know that you're aware. It's true. So when you tell me, Jen, I'm aware, right? And then I'm like, great, what are you doing about it?
So you don't just want to know. You
No, I
want to
don't
make
want to
sure
just know.
I
I
have a
also
proper
want to know
plan.
what you're doing about it. What is your plan? But I can
Let's
tell you.
reevaluate that plan together. Let's have a quarterly review
Can
of your
I can
plan.
I control the plan? Right. Yes. Can we have a quarterly review? Well, quarterly reviews would be helpful.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
I like that
But
idea.
yeah, at the end of the day, what has really helped me is seeing, like, you explaining what you've explained here to our audience, that it's not always safe for me for you to share everything with me, right? But you letting me know that you are aware, that you are, like, say there's something really specific, like there's something specific that you struggle with, and I see it, and right, it's very touchy here.
Is there a speck of sawdust in my eye? Is that what it is?
But we're also really beautiful, and we bring a lot of, as you say, power and feminine fire to the relationship. But yeah, I think it's important for us to see you working on you. And I will also add to that, though, because again, in the women that I work with, my encouragement for them is to not micromanage what you're working on. So say you in working on yourself and becoming more humble and stepping into a healthier masculine. Me micromanaging that path for you was never helpful. Your faith, you've strengthened your faith, but me saying that your faith journey and your relationship with God needs to look exactly like mine because the things that I do work for me. And so Dante, go out and you need to do the things that I'm doing or right? You're never going to get there. Like that's me getting into your lane, right? So, but it is helpful for me to know, I don't need to know all the details, but just to know that you are conscious and that you are aware and that you are in one way or another working on yourself. So that those little touch bases or the little ways that you do let me into your world bring me great relief and they help me to relax and soften and trust. And then over time, it builds more trust.
Exactly.
Right. So when you're looking at a marriage that needs some work, trust is going to take time. Trust is not given, it's earned and it takes time. So that goes back to what you said earlier with patience. We as women have to have patience with our men just as much as you need to have patience with us too. So giving each other a lot of grace, giving yourself grace. It starts with giving yourself grace and being compassionate for yourself. And when you really truly, women listening to this, are doing your own work, you know that it's not easy. So turning around to your partner and expecting them to wave a magic wand and have all their shit worked out is not fair because it's taking us time to self-reflect, to dissolve some limiting beliefs, to step away from the false identities, like all the things that I talk about on this podcast. And yes, in our fantasy world, it would be amazing if you guys could go do that like overnight, like maybe go to a weekend retreat or something, and then come back and be our ideal leader, right? The healthiest masculine you can be, also embodying the healthy feminine, all the things like be it for me, please, because that's going to help me. And that's just not fair. That's not fair. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, agree. It's
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
fair. These things take time and
They
trust
do
takes
take time. And trust takes time. And so the building of trust especially when you're working on a marriage and maybe you're rebuilding some things or like us, you tore down some things that weren't working so that you could rebuild, it is going to take time. So giving one another a lot of grace and being really patient and reminding ourselves to be patient and also reminding ourselves, ladies, that our safety is actually not really rooted in our man. Like, yes, he can help us feel safe in the relationship. And there are things that are not safe in a relationship, of course, like that goes without saying. But reminding us, for me, reminding myself, where is my safety from? And that's from God within me. And so returning to that when I'm in a fearful place, going back to that, stepping away from fear and stepping back into faith. Okay, so back to our questions here. So what pressures, Dante, do men carry that women may not always see or recognize?
My gosh.
Yeah, please
I mean,
enlighten us.
yeah, we could do a whole podcast on it. Well, look,
Mhm.
this cuts both ways, right? There's a whole world of women among women that men don't see. Well, I shouldn't say that. Men actually see more than women may think we see, but we aren't interested in getting involved in it and are just interested in the world of men because women are always interested in everybody else's business. It's just sort of the nature. So what are the things that we think about? I mean, look, men see the world in terms of hierarchy. We very quickly size one another up. That's like if you all show up on a basketball court together, you're sizing people up based on a preset, criteria. Like tallest guys, you're obviously going to be like, okay, him. Like you're going to recognize the tall people. At work, we're always looking and sizing one another up. And it's this very quick combination of competition and cooperation. So we're always looking to like build a team. So when I'm at work and I'm dealing with people in this department or that department, I always make a mental note of the people who I'm like, oh, they're good. They're good at what they do. And it's like, okay, he's the guy who I can come and do this or that with. I don't know if you remember the A-Team from the 1980s, but
of
the
course.
A-Team was like, right, okay. And there's the one guy who's the pilot. There's another guy who's the con man. There's another guy who's like the muscle. There's another guy who's the strategist. He thinks of everything. Each guy is there, and each is important because each has his own role. And they're not all trying to do everything. Each guy has a very specific set of area of expertise, and they cooperate. And men love getting into a zone with one another when we're in that space. That's the zone that, like, men get into, and more any athletes get into when you're on a team and you have that, one another and what one another's thinking, and all things you do are complementary. So men are kind of living in a world where we're sizing everything up all the time, and we're always sort of looking for partnerships and teammates and complementary skills. Okay. So one area where this is directly important to women is understanding that your man picked you because you are not good at the things that he's good at. You're good at different things than he's good at. So let's not say, why didn't you see the laundry and do the laundry? It's like, if you're good at the laundry, you do the laundry. I will make sure that the cars have oil in them, that they have gas in them, that the bills are paid. Like, let's agree on what's what early on. And if we can agree on what the roles are, let's not try and do one another's roles. That's because men are thinking in this complementary way. They actually want to be able to say, honestly, I don't know what we should make for dinner tonight, because when I look in the fridge, I don't see a meal. I see a whole bunch of different stuff, but I don't see a meal. You're very good at, no, I see a meal and a half here, actually. Let me do this, and I could whip this up really quick, and you're really good at it, and you love it. Let's not try and make me good at that, because that's not what I'm ever going to be good at. I'll be good at the things that I'm good at, and you'll be good at the things that you're good at. So seeing things in hierarchy, sizing one another up, looking for complementary skills and behaviors. One of the other things that we've talked about, and I could go on and on about this, but this is a really big thing, is men appreciate exclusivity, and enthusiasm. One of the key things that men find attractive is a woman finds them attractive. That is, in and of itself, for many men, enough for him to find a woman attractive. Women should understand that. Man doesn't need you to be, a Sports Illustrated cover model. Most men know themselves. They're realistic. They know that they're not going to get a Sports Illustrated cover model, and they don't care. They don't need that. Mm-hmm. They can see that and go, yeah, she's gorgeous, but I love her, and like they've made that commitment, that investment of caring in you, not in her. And most men, a vast majority of men, see that and think, ultimately, that's probably way more of a headache than it's worth anyway. But the truth is, he's looking at you and he's saying, he can see all that he wants. He can see all the sexiness. He can see all the attractiveness, all the flaws that you see in yourself. He looks right past them, or he might see them and see them as things that he finds endearing about you because they're unique to you. Mm-hmm. And women can have confidence in that, because your man is not judging you the way, like, women are much, 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 much harsher judges.
Yeah.
Men are not harsh judges. Like, women are harsh judges on one another and on men, but men, I promise you, your man, if you asked him, like, do you still find me attractive? He'd be like, oh my God, definitely. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. That's something important, that it's important to remember.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. I feel like we went on a little bit of a tangent there. So I'm going to just bring us back in to this whole conversation around helping women to really be able to connect with their man, have more compassion, and it also invite them into vulnerability. So what actually makes you feel safe enough as a man to be vulnerable? Because you were talking about that a little bit earlier, about how you want to share some things. And I had said that, we were laughing about, it does help us that you're a little bit vulnerable. So is it that you're going to open up and be vulnerable with us, and then we're not going to attack you for it? We're not going to use it against you? Like, what helps you to feel safe enough to be vulnerable with us?
The fastest way is to show us that you're going to have our back, even if you don't agree with us. Among men, that's how we operate. It's like, we're on the same team. We made a decision. It's not the decision that I agree with, but I'm going to back what we've decided as a team. So I'm not going to go, well, I disagree with what we're doing, but he says we should do X, Y, Z. Okay. That's just not how we operate. So if there's an opportunity to show your man that you're going to back his play, back him up, even if you don't agree with him, instant trust. Instantly he knows he can be vulnerable, because you've shown him that him and gaining his trust is the most important thing to you. Now, it's a rare opportunity that you get to do that. So the reality for most women will be time and evidence. Like, don't betray his trust. Don't use it against him.
Mm.
Because see, here's the thing. You don't get many tries. Like, if a man is vulnerable with you and he shares something and then you throw it in his face, you may be done. He may never give you a chance again. He really may never. And if he ever does, it'll be for something much less significant. And then he's going to give you that much less and see if he can trust you with even that. And if he can't, done. He's done. Because fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That's how men feel about that type of thing. And we're warriors inside. So that is what I mean by being vulnerable and caring about anything is so costly for us. Prove it. Prove yourself worthy of being vulnerable.
Right. Okay. So proving ourselves worthy of you being vulnerable with us,
Yes. Be trustworthy.
be trustworthy, be vulnerable ourselves, right?
Yes.
Be kind. Can I throw that in there too? I
Of
know.
course. Well, be kind should
Right.
be table stakes, right?
Well, but I don't think that all women are kind, especially when perhaps their partner is doing things that they don't like or doesn't feel good to them, right?
Okay.
You know, again, you've got this woman and she's doing her work and she's becoming more aware, and he's down here and he's stuck in his old patterns, and there's things that he's doing that just doesn't feel good to her, and she doesn't know how to approach him, and she doesn't know how to ask him for more vulnerability and help. So another thing that a lot of women run into, especially after years and years of even mothering like children. So you've had children together, and we're going to talk midlife here. And these children are growing up and maybe they're even leaving the nest, but they've been in this mothering and they're trying to step away from that dynamic so that they can be more feminine and let their husband rise into more healthy masculine. But they have this, well, I have to do everything dynamic going on. And a lot of women feel like they have to be in their masculine because if they don't, everything is going to fall apart. So what's your perspective on a dynamic like that? Like, I want him to rise and I know, and I'm doing my work and I want to soften and I want to be more feminine, but I can't be more feminine because I do everything. And he just sits back and is oftentimes a man who's become very disassociated and complacent because she does do everything. Fine, let her do it. I'm going to just zone out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, what's your perspective on that? What do you do about that?
Well, we have a lot of mothering going on in this country right now
Mhm.
instead of wifing. And we have a lot of young men who never learned how to be men. This is going to come back to men having to find themselves and men having to do their own work. There's no silver bullet. That's just the reality. There's no magic pill that makes this easy. It just doesn't exist. I believe we have a lot of young men right now, young and older men too. We have a lot of middle-aged men, and so a lot of the women you work with that probably relate to this. They've been appropriate being a mom in the house for the past 20 years.
Mhm.
And now they're moving out of that spot because, as you've said, kids are moving out. The nest is getting empty. This dynamic of I'm mom to everyone is suddenly revealing I'm also mom to him, and that's supposed to be my husband. And that raises all sorts of kind of issues. Well, that's probably a very common issue. It's one of the many, many issues we're seeing that are rising out of young men being raised in single parent homes.
Right. But
Okay.
I mean, I'm just going to try and like focus us because we're going to wrap it up here really soon.
Okay.
And just more Dante on, I mean, we could talk for hours about
I know we
why
could.
this is and where it comes from, but what are you
Okay.
gonna like, what would you say to the woman who's afraid to let go because she doesn't trust that things are gonna get done? So if she needs to soften so he can step into his healthy masculinity, but he's been checked out and disassociated and letting her, rule the so to speak for so long, what would you say to her? How would you coach her?
It's a different question, and I'm happy to answer it. That's a great
Yeah.
question. The answer to that question is that's a faith journey. That's a faith journey
Yeah.
because that's a challenge of faith. That is someone
Mhm.
who's decided, no, I'm in control. No, you're not in control, and it's not up to you. So the challenge for you is, do you have faith that God has it and that this man is actually in God's hands? And that if you want to get back to humility, if you take your hands out of the mix, you might find that God's been trying to work on this and you've been in the way. Now, I know that might not sit well with a lot of people, but absent a take this, drink this and it'll make him better, that's the hard truth.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do. One of the things that I advise my women in this dynamic, or any woman that I'm working with that really desires to stay in their relationship and have the relationship improve is trust God in them. Even if they are not aware, if your partner isn't aware that God is inside of them, God still is. So trust it, trust God in yourself, and stop giving power away to anything outside of God, and believe, like step into that energy of belief that they can change. Because when we're not in that energy, we have an energy of fear, right? So there's fear, and what does fear do? Well, fear makes us controlling, anxious, right? Tight, tense. That's not going to work. It's not going to invite him forward and up. It's going to actually have him pulling back more and more and more. I mean, that just loops back to the beginning of our conversation about humility and how important it is for us to have humility. And we need to have humility, and before we can expect our partner to have humility too. So I really
It takes
appreciate
humility
that
to let God handle it and not
yeah.
try and control it
Oh
yourself.
my gosh, it's hard. I mean, I have a God box, and I've talked about that on this podcast before. And I've recommended this to so many of my clients, where when I have something that feels so big and I'm really, really struggling to let it go, to stop trying to control it, I write it on a note card and I'll put it in my God box. And for me, it's just a very symbolic way of saying, no, Jen, you are letting it go. This isn't yours to know all the details of. It's not yours to control. But I also write it in a very affirming way that I know that God is taking care of this and God is handling this. And I can't tell you how many of my prayers, because they are prayers, it's affirming that God is all and endless possibilities, have come to fruition. Maybe not in the way that I would have scripted or in my timeline, but they have. But I've had to let them go. And as soon as I let go, that creates an energy for the endless possibilities. And I know for you and things that I was like so controlling for so long, once I let them go, oh my gosh, like you felt it. It was an energy. And then you started to step up and rise because you felt safer to do that. I wasn't going to be micromanaging you and watching you under a microscope. So this is all great. I think we're going to do another one of these because I've probably got through half the questions that I have on my list. And I think we've been on for almost an hour. And this is such a valuable conversation that I don't want people to feel like their head is spinning, so that we can really give listeners time to digest it, to process. And then we'll do another episode. I want to do another one. And I actually, listeners, I want to invite you to submit your questions. You can submit them to me via email. You can put them in the comments of this episode and we'll address them. Like Dante and I will do this again because this is very helpful. This is really helpful for us as women. The majority of my listeners on this podcast are women, and we oftentimes do expect you men to think like us, to function like us, to be like us. And it's really helpful in our journey of surrendering, right? And living a life that is peaceful and joyous and stepping into freedom, to understand that we're designed very differently too. So I really, really, really appreciate you answering all of these questions on the fly, Dante. You did a great job.
But
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. So
course.
again, listeners, we really appreciate you joining us here for this conversation. Again, if you want to hear a little bit of our backstory and you missed the previous 2 episodes, we will have those in the show notes as well, links for those. Send me your questions. Send me your reflections, your feedback on this conversation. Share with me some of the things that you're navigating with in your own relationship right now. It's so helpful. We will do another episode like this. And if it resonated with you, please share this with your partner as well. Let this be a doorway into conversation for you and your partner. It's not pressure. You're not sending it to your partner to try and fix them at all, just understanding. And again, open it up with humility, with vulnerability, with softness. Just open up the dialogue and the conversation. So as always, thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Surrender. Thank you for joining me on the Daily Surrender. If today's episode spoke to you, I'd love to hear your reflections. Send me a message, share this with a friend, or leave a review. Remember, true healing and freedom come when we let go, surrender, and trust that God's way is so much better than our way. Until next time, my friends, keep surrendering, keep rising, and keep walking in peace.